welcome back to another episode of the Night Project podcast. I am your host, Summer Holtzhower, and I am very excited to have our guest today. We have Miss Danielle Hippeli from Highlands Grove Elementary. How are you doing?
I'm great, Summer. It's great to be here.
Well, good. I'm so happy to have you. You have been in Polk County for 11 years. And what different roles have you had?
So I moved down here from Philadelphia as a first-year teacher looking for a job. My husband and I both just said we're going on an adventure, and we came down. I was a teacher for 6 years. I was really excited about the idea of sparking more of a change. And so I applied for the coaching role, and I got my first coaching role. And I have now been coaching for this will be year 5. So I've been a teacher. While I was a teacher, my last few years in the classroom, did a lot of mentoring, which sparked that excitement to then go the coaching route. So. And I've predominantly been reading, but have crossed the barriers of most subjects in just general instructional coaching.
Yeah, that's great. Well, if any of you have ever met Danielle, you'll know that she is very positive, and you feel like you get like a little rush of energy being around you. And I know that your teachers and students and just everyone who comes in contact with you probably really enjoys that as much as I do.
Thank you.
I kind of wanted to ask you about some of the challenges that we're going through in education right now, because we always hear everywhere, it's such a challenging year, and we kind of all thought like COVID was, this is the worst year ever. And then the next year we're like, no,
it's getting worse and worse.
So kind of tell us a little bit about the challenges that maybe educators are facing today or what's going on.
Yeah, so I think that so often right now we concentrate on what's going on right now and the frustrations we're dealing with, and we constantly, what you said, it can't get any worse. And I started thinking back, when I first started teaching 11 years ago, teaching wasn't easy. None of us went into the profession because it was an easy job to go into.
Yeah.
But I think now we just have a lot more stacked against us outside of our classrooms. I said my first year teaching, I remember telling you, I look back and I don't even hang those pictures from my first few years on the wall because I was learning and I was figuring it out. And but I think now we're dealing with outside issues that we can't control. We're now dealing with new changes in benchmarks again. I'm going on my third round of benchmarks since I've been teaching in 11 years, and that's just a struggle in general. It's not to say that it's not to keep up. It's not a great thing because it's keeping up with the demands of today's society. But it's a natural struggle. Again, COVID is a huge, you said before, COVID has had a lot of things that have changed education. It's changed education in halting learning for a period of time. It changed the way we had to learn.
Yeah.
I think we all are really good about pushing the buttons on Zoom now. And
Mute.
and unmuting and unmuting. But we had to learn how to be more flexible from e-learning. We had kindergarten babies who were doing learning on a computer screen, and we had to figure out how to be the parent when we weren't in front of them. But also too, COVID has brought the challenge of just dealing with students and adults who struggle with how to interact with people, and how to positively interact with people and problems. We had this period of time where we weren't allowed to be with people, and we weren't allowed to be face-to-face and be in meeting spots together. And now we're having to relearn a lot of the practices we've always all learned and we've always all known, but we're having to relearn them. And so I said it's created a lot of barriers for us as educators, because parents don't know what that looks like in our classrooms. Some of us as educators don't really know how to go back to the best practices we had before. So there's just a lot of general struggles. But I think the biggest takeaway I realized in all of this is every day you're going to have a struggle.
Definitely.
And I think it's my biggest thing. And you said about the being the positive person being around me. I'm just one of those people who I don't think it's worth it to concentrate on all of the things that aren't going well, because there always are things that are going well. And again, just like all of that, like a lot of great things have come out of COVID too. But it's easy. Yeah. It's a lot easier to deal with and concentrate on the negative.
That's great to think about focusing on the positive, especially in a situation where you do feel like everything is stacked against you. Just being able to say, okay, I'm not going to think about all those big hurdles, but let's think about like the one good thing that happened today or something. Is that something that you do regularly, or how else? How do you just be so positive? Give me tips. Let me know what I need to do.
And I think a lot of it isn't like just being positive. I think for me, I really concentrate on finding those positives and allowing that to be what I concentrate on. I was thinking about the idea of like when we think of how bogged down we are, I almost kind of think of it as like a blockade. Like you're trying to get out the door at the end of the day and all of these boxes and barrels and all of these things are shoved up against the door. And the only way we're going to get out that door is by taking them off piece by piece. We can't open the door and pull everything open, pull everything off, and it's going to fall. And so I think that's a big idea, is the idea we have to take small chunks and small pieces and take them off of that large stack. And sometimes it is easier when you take those first two boxes off of the stack. And it's easier to rip that door open and again, and like just at least get rid of those things for a few moments. But I said, I think, I don't really know that I would say they're tips, but I think a lot of it is being intentional in what you're presented with. I think back to, we were talking about obstacles and the idea of the reading endorsement. A few years back, the state decided we had to be reading endorsed if we were teaching students that were in Tier 2. And that was a huge hurdle for us as educators and as us as reading coaches, because it was our responsibility to take on that big task of trying to help teachers at our schools. And I think a lot of us just automatically were like, how are we going to do this? It's just automatic defeat. And really when it comes down to it is like, how can we take it in chunks and make it work for the people that are with us? And I think often it's finding those people that want to make movement with you, and saying, come on, let's go. And we're going to conquer this. And you go with those willing. But again, you don't take those huge chunks and take huge bites and expect that we're going to be able to swallow it right away. I think we have to just chew on it for a little while and take little pieces and rely on those people around us who go off of your energy, because that's the end of the day. Everyone isn't going to like your energy and isn't going to like
a huge thing.
It isn't going to like the positive spins you bring to it. And there's just Debbie Downers. Honestly, I think the biggest thing though, again, is it's not about moving those Debbie Downers, because if they don't want to move towards change and they don't want to do what's best for the kids that we have waiting in our classrooms and in our schools, then those might not be the people you want to pull along with you. But I think there's a lot of great out there that we can pull back on. And again, and back to that, the reading endorsement, I really think I realized right away those people who just wanted to come to complain and sit there and it was a waste. It was a waste of their time, and then it became a waste of our time collectively. And then one day, me and a few of my other fellow teachers finally spoke up and just said, hey, like, we are all in this struggle together. We can sit here and keep complaining, and then we're here for 45 minutes extra, or we can come together, we can have our conversations, and we can be done. And it was so vital to see having those conversations and seeing the little sparks of change, how it trickled into people realizing that it really wasn't that bad. It actually became more fun because it was a time for us kind of to get together and share ideas that we didn't have the time for, because maybe you taught middle school and I taught fourth grade.
Yes.
And so I didn't interact with you. And so it gave us those opportunities too. And again, it was a super large negative eyesore for us, but we made the fun out of it. And I think that's really genuinely is finding your people and going with it, and realizing that there's going to be something good that comes out of it. And sometimes it's harder to find it. Don't get me wrong.
Yes, definitely.
Don't get me wrong. I have my days where I want to just go back to bed and throw my blankets over top of me and not put my contacts in for the day and call it a day before the day even starts. I'm, again, as positive as I am, I have those moments and I have those days. But I have to realize, though, that if I don't get up and I don't put my contacts in and I don't get ready for work, there might be a kid that's sad that I'm not there that day. Or I might have a teacher.
I'm sure.
Or I might just have a teacher who's having a way worse day than I am. Yeah. And I think, again, it's having that empathy to realize that I can give something to someone else or help someone in some way that's going to help them be more successful.
Yes.
And that's the job of a coach. I think, honestly, I think we get so bogged down thinking coaches are above us and thinking that they're only there to criticize. And I think we miss the opportunity that our instructional coaches are huge shoulders to lean on. In those times of struggle or just, again, simple. I don't know how to use this. Can you come in and help me? Or can you help me find someone who's really good at that?
Yes, they can be a great resource. I definitely agree with you on that. And it's something that I hope all teachers realize and take advantage of.
Yeah. And I also hope, too, that coaches realize that, like that blessing they have in their hands, too, as instructional coaches, as pretty much anyone that's on the side of the classroom. You have that ability to be a shoulder, a back to carry people on, whatever it is, to just give a little bit of extra support to those teachers who don't have the ability to walk out of their classrooms. And I said it's helping to make those positive changes.
Yeah. I love what you said about being intentional and finding the positivity in something, or just like finding those little sparks of moments that work for you. I think that's something that we all can do and that we all can learn from, because it is so easy to be overwhelmed by everything. Like even when, like, I don't know, we're getting feedback or something, we always just like look at the negative. We could have like 20 positive things and one negative, and we're like, oh no, that's it. That's the thing that I latch onto. Yeah.
And I think to go off of that, I think of it as like just a teacher when it comes to data. We're such a data-driven society right now, because that's we have to fill in gaps from COVID. And it is so sad, because all of our eyes right away go to that. Oh my gosh, Joey dropped 20 points. But yet you have 6 kids sitting in your classroom who made extraordinary gains. And I do. And I again, it goes back to the intention. I think we have to look at the giant mountains we have to climb, and we have to realize that, that mountain's really high. But if we're not intentional on how we're going to train and how we're going to prepare and who we're going to bring with us on our trip, we're not going to get to that top of the mountain.
No.
And I think a lot of it, again, it comes from intention. And that's been my word for the year. And I'm trying really hard to be cognizant of when I'm bogged down or I'm just kind of in the dumps for the day, going back to what was my intention? What was my intention for today? What was I intentionally trying to do? Was it for, again, stress relief today? Or was it to make connections? Or was it specifically because I needed to decipher data? And going back to that reminder that that's what I said for myself today.
Yes.
And again, and I go back on it, I don't ever want to ever come across as like the toxic positivity, because that is common right now. And I think that's a major setback across just education in general, is this idea of toxic positivity.
Yes.
It's the idea that we understand it. We understand, but we're not really willing to make a change or see the change. And that's hard. That's a hard battle. And I think often too, people just are like, But I said, I think that's where the intention really comes into factor, is when we have those intentional ideas, the positivity actually comes.
Well, you're so genuine. I definitely don't think anyone could say that your positivity is toxic in any way. But what happens when you come across someone who maybe is negative or who is not willing to to just understand your outlook or just always wants to bring you down? Is there anything that you...
So one thing that I have learned, and this definitely came about once I became a coach and once I was outside of the classroom, I just don't think you don't see the outside world as much when you're within your own four walls. But I always go back to this. I think relationships are such a huge factor when it comes to dealing with anyone.
Yes.
I have a passion for people and getting to know people and getting to understand people. And I think that at the end of the day, you're going to come across people who just don't want to change and they don't want to listen to your positive spin on things. And I think oftentimes it's not giving the attention because that's sometimes what they need. I think that's with adults. I think that's with children. We say the same thing when children give us a really negative behavior. It's not to ignore it. We're not supposed to ignore it, but I think it's the idea that we have to not give them the energy that like to combat with them.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest thing is like sometimes you do just have to say, you know what, I think we're just going to disagree. But I have truly seen the work be done that sometimes the negativity is because of not understanding, or not knowing, or not understanding and knowing the reasons behind things. And I think sometimes you just need to have those honest conversations with people and students. I will speak to that specifically. One of my great passions is trying to connect with kids, even as a coach. And I think often I gravitate towards those kids that do have the outbursts and maybe not the best behavior, because I want to find out what it is that's creating those outbursts and that attention-seeking behavior. And typically, I haven't come across many that I can't. But I think typically, again, getting to that point of like having conversations and knowing background helps to be able to break down those barriers, because oftentimes people really want to see the positive. They just don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
And so I said, I think, again, it goes back to intention. It goes back to the intentional relationships you build and the intentional conversations you have.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy thing. I also will say that it's not an easy thing to do. There's nothing worse than having to knock on someone's door and say, hey, can I just come in and talk for a few minutes? Because everyone has that like sweating bullets, freaking out idea as soon as they hear those words. But that's important. Having conversations and having tough conversations is important to have, especially so that the air can be clear.
Yes.
And again, sometimes it's not that someone intends to be rude to you or come across in a disrespectful way. They might just not understand, and that's their way of coping with the situation. So I said, I think a lot of it really just comes down to having those people that are willing to put in the work, to have those conversations and to say, like, I understand why you're frustrated. I totally understand why you're frustrated after dealing with X student and Y student, and it's been a long day. I understand, but how can I help? Or what can I do? And again,
because that's what you want to do at the end of the day is you want to help, and that's why you're there. And it's tough sometimes.
It is. It's the job of an educator is not an easy job. And I think that's what it comes down to. None of us went into this because we knew it was easy. The summers off are fantastic. Don't get me wrong. Laying on the beach and getting tan is awesome. But the job we do the rest of the year is a tough job, and it is just getting tougher. But I also will say, too, I think COVID created a really thick skin on a lot of us. And I think it made a lot of us a lot stronger than we ever thought we were. And I think those are like some of the positives that did come out of it.
Yeah, that's a great outlook on it.
Yeah. And I said, I mean, like that was a battle that all of us were like, what do you mean we're going to teach from online? We're going to do this, and we're going to make phone calls, and we did it. And I think we did it with the help of the people around us. But we're all capable. We're all capable of doing it. Again, it's just having the strength to keep going.
Yeah, that's that's huge. It's being positive really can help so much with like your own personal outlook and your own personal self at school, but also will have an effect on your students. It'll have an effect on your coworkers. It will help everyone. So that's great. Do you have any advice for new teachers? Because sometimes they can get bogged down in a little bit of negativity as well. Or maybe it's negativity is not the right word. I think I'm thinking of overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed, yeah.
And so it can kind of be perceived as negative. What kind of advice do you give to your new friends?
So I was actually just talking with another friend about the idea that I think as seasoned teachers, we forget about those moments. And as a coach, I'm much more aware because I'm working with those teachers often. But I think that the biggest thing that I keep saying is resilience. Like we all were there. We're still standing today. So I think that goes to show that like everything does pass. There does come a point you don't know what you cross over, but you eventually cross over this giant river of realizing that you actually can do it. Again, it's not easy. I think oftentimes too, we definitely just see a giant mountain of things that pushed up against the door, and we don't have the skills to be able to know how to pull things off. And I think, again, that creates a giant battle, is not knowing how to deal with a student, not knowing how to deal with a kid that's defiant and just screams back at you. You don't have those tools on your tool belt to understand that like you yelling back at them isn't going to help. But I always, and I think that's the one thing where it's like, it goes back to finding the things that are going well. If you can think of a student that you touched and you really made a difference in during that first year of teaching, that's a huge win. If you can find that one student who came in not knowing any of their letter sounds and now is reading chapter books, those are wins. And I think, again, it's finding the things that are you are successful in. Because as a first-year teacher and as a first few-year teacher, you're not supposed to know it all. I'm in year 11, and I still don't think I know what I'm doing most days. But again, no one knows what's going on in your four walls. Your four walls are your sanctity of doing what's best for your students. And I think at the end of the day, if you're showing up with the attitude that I am here to do what is best for my students and to make a difference, you did more than other people by just showing up. And again, I think all of us have horror stories, and we all are standing to this day. So I said, I think it's one of those ones you just got to keep swimming.
Yeah, it is. It's almost like, I don't know, like chunking a text to make it easier. It's like take that little part that you can really own and work on, and just focus on that for right now. That's really great advice.
And I think too, like as you continue on and you start to get those tools in your tool belt, next year you have a goal, and your goal might be, this year I really want to learn how to do small groups in a more effective way. And again, it's little baby chunks that, like you have all year to do that. But think about the fact, if you're staying in this career for 30 years, if you keep adding something else that you're really, really good at, there's going to come a point where you're unstoppable. And mind you, they'll change something again. But I think just having those basic ideas, the basics of teaching aren't changing. It's what we're teaching and how we're teaching it that may change a little bit. But the idea of managing children and having conversations with children and knowing them, and all of those core things, that's not changing in education. So every year, just adding little chunks is going to make a difference. And one day you'll look back and you'll also too not hang up those pictures. You'll not hang up those pictures, but you will have it all, and you'll
have
think
a full
like
tool belt.
And you'll think like, wow, that it was hard back then, and it's so much easier now, and I made it through. And again, it's just continuing on even when it's hard.
I love that. I love all these little tips you've given us. Be intentional, don't look at the whole mountain, take a little piece off. We're having all sorts of good little tips here. So I'm going to ask you our typical Ignite Project podcast question. If you could pick one area in education to spark a change and ignite a shift in behavior or mindset, what would that be?
That's a hard one to to get down to the nitty gritty. I think my idea is I want to ignite a spark in the idea of passion. We all have something that we bring to the table.
Okay.
Whether it's experience, whether it's knowledge in a subject area, whether it's relationship building, finding what our intention is and what our passion is and what makes us happy, and bringing that to school every day. Our schools desperately need people of all sorts, people who are passionate about music and people who are passionate about history and people who are really passionate about making connections with students. We need all of those things.
Yes.
And if we can all show up to work every day and share those passions with the people that the students and the staff members that we're surrounded with, I think Polk County is just we're gonna skyrocket on the map of being the best, because we're all showing up with what's best and what we love the most. And so I just said, again, my passion's people, and I feel like I love to be able to spread that around and have those connections. And I just hope that as Polk County educators and staff members, that we can continue to bring our passion and what we're really, really, really great at to work every day. Because I think it would be a great place.
Yeah, that is so wonderful, because it does. I mean, your passion definitely adds a bit of you to your classroom. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it makes it just a fun and enjoyable place to be around. So I agree with you. I think passion is it's huge when it comes to education.
It is.
So that is wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a pleasure, and I always look forward to getting to go over and see you wherever you're at and seeing you at events. It's always so much fun. So I love it. I really appreciate you coming and joining us today and sharing some of your knowledge and wisdom with us. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to finally be here sitting with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for listening in today, and if you have not caught up on our other episodes, please make sure you go listen to a couple more. Have a great day, and we will hear you next time.
Thanks for joining us. You can subscribe to the Ignite Project on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or Spotify, or watch online at the Polk County Public Schools YouTube channel. To learn more about the Ignite Project and other Polk County Public Schools podcasts, go to polkschoolsfl.com/podcasts.